Jeremy, thank you very much. That was a fabulous way to begin a conversation. A lot of stuff to digest there, an awful lot of information conveyed. Thankfully, Jeremy's book, which actually hasn't been formally released, is on sale here today, so to go through these ideas at your own pace, I certainly will require that book to try to figure out many of the comments and ideas that Jeremy presented. Unquestionably, Jeremy's referencing this key and fundamental challenge, something we have a lot of trouble with, that relates to systems thinking, this notion of a highly sophisticated system of human action and activities and infrastructure that's required globally. And change is hard, fundamentally hard for all of us. I was at a session a few years back in Paris where E.O. Wilson, the biologist from Harvard, spoke. And if any of you have had a chance to see him, he was an older gentleman, I think about 80 or so at the time. But he made one very, very powerful comment to me, which I took away, and it was referencing human nature. And at the time, he said that over 5-6 million years, human nature, we are hardwired to be very short-term minded. We're very, very short-term thinkers, and that's been a hardwired function of 5 million years of scrounging for food. Well, food, sex, and shelter. The three things that require us to continue our lives and procreate, I suppose, across generations. The one of the three, though, that stood out was the notion of shelter. And shelter does require a slightly longer-term view than food and sex, I suppose. But the shelter piece is really what Jeremy's referring to, the notion of biosphere thinking, the shelter of the planet that we have. It is well beyond traditional thinking of the human race over the last 5 million years to think as long into the future as is required with that idea. So Jeremy's comments began fairly dark. On a rainy day, I suppose, it resonates even more so, but ended with this notion of hope that requires us to act boldly. I don't usually speak politically, but I can't help but reflect on Jeremy's reference to the Ontario leadership position that's emerged under the Liberal government with the feed-in tariff, the Greenbelt Act, the Water Opportunities Act, the Green Energy Act. Unquestionably some tweaking required in many of these pieces, and it's easy to criticize big, new, bold initiatives, but they are powerful. They are leadership initiatives, globally in some cases, certainly in North America, and we cannot let some of these ideas move to the sidelines under the whim of political change. We need to invest in these bold ideas and drive for leadership. My hope, personally, many respects connected to the idea of this particular site, is for leadership. Leadership globally as a venue here to explore big ideas. But lots of little ideas too. All these ideas don't have to be huge. They're small ideas. This big black cylinder to my left here is a water cistern. We have 16 of these giant water cisterns around the site. We are collecting water in that cistern right now off the roof. And we are a net producer of water on site. There are lots of other things that can be done along those lines. So moving right along, Jeremy, thank you very much once again. A tremendous place to begin our conversation. I'd like to open up the broader discussion now with our first panel. This first panel is about innovation in action. It's sponsored by Ernst & Young and will be moderated by David Naylor. If you can make your way up, that'd be great. I want to introduce David Naylor as everybody begins to assemble. David has been the president of the University of Toronto since 2005. He earned his medical degree at Toronto in 1978, followed by studies at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. David has co-authored approximately 300 publications spanning social history, public policy, epidemiology and biostatistics, and health economics. Among other honors, David is a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, a Foreign Associate Fellow of the U.S. Institute of Medicine, and an Officer of the Order of Canada. Please welcome David and the rest of the panel.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. I have to say it is a daunting task, I think, for the panelists to follow that remarkable visionary address by Jeremy Rifkin, and we are going to take that work that we all have to do from the sort of vision that Jeremy shared with us to some concrete steps in keeping with the theme of the panel, which is innovation in action. And my role is the simple one. I just have to be the moderator and introducer. We have a full agenda, some great speakers, and I think we should get right to it. I do want to forego, as requested by the organizers, detailed introductions of our panelists. You will see their bios in your program. As Jeff said, it's a very good program document, and this is a very fine group of individuals. I'm going to be very brief in terms of saying who they are. Paul Ostrander is President and CEO of Holcim Canada, and he will be our first speaker. If you could join me in welcoming Paul Ostrander.
Thank you, David. I didn't put the 5 pillars in my presentation, but let me assure you, even with the 5 pillars, we're going to need the building material that I want to talk about today, which is concrete. Concrete is the most used building material in the world, and if we're going to have successful cities, it's an essential building material that we'll require. CTV came forward a few weeks ago and talked about the city of the future, Toronto. I'm going to talk mostly about Toronto. And whatever we do in Toronto, we're going to need concrete. The bottom right-hand corner on this presentation here is the food terminal, and why not have a market garden with the food terminal? Concrete is essential building material. It's a local building material. It has lower life cycle costs, it's versatile, it's reliable, there's energy conservation, but once again, it's an innovative local product that when we use it, it's from here. The people are here, the products are here, and if you use it, you're even smarter than you think. We have a lot of global partnerships, local partnerships with UT, University of Waterloo, around building materials and making them more efficient, and global partnerships that we bring to the table here, the World Sustainable Business Council for some of our health and safety and emission issues, and other associated associations. Holcim Canada is local, as I said. We have a cement plant 20 miles from Toronto. We have a quarry 25 miles from Toronto. Our ready-mix plants are right downtown, and those things, it's a local building material that's close to the market, and when you use concrete, you're helping your local economy. We can make concrete plants very sexy. The mayor of Paris, France, wanted a concrete plant right downtown. We built a plant 10 minutes from the Eiffel Tower on the Seine, and as you can see at night, it's actually a walkway where people can walk underneath our concrete. So it is a very friendly facility. We can build some fabulous things. Holcim has the Sustainable Foundation, Sustainable Construction Foundations. This is a winner from Seville, Spain. I think it's Seville, Spain. That's wood at top, but underneath that, of course, is concrete. Concrete is essential to anything we're going to build, so why not build it locally, use local products, and do some creative stuff with it. You need concrete to have an industrial city. You need it for runways, you need it for the bridges, you need it for on the bottom right-hand corner is your Sir Adam Beck, which we're building right now, hydroelectric generating penstock to bring more electricity into Toronto, and of course highways to bring in food. We can start to innovate right away at the beginning with the manufacturing process when we make concrete. We already innovate with slag and fly ash, bringing other products in, but why not, as Jeremy said, we can burn waste from the city. Why not take shingles and use them, they're a waste product, use them as an engineered fuel to replace coal to make concrete or cement in our area. It took us 5 years to do a simple thing, which was to put 10% more limestone into our cement, which reduces CO2 by 520,000 tons across Canada. It took us 5 years. We needed to get a minister's order to do something that environmentally friendly. We can do a lot of fabulous things with concrete, but we need help. Concrete, of course, not only does it require cement, it's also aggregates. This is one of our quarries out in Milton, the rehabilitation of our quarry. When we finish rehabilitating a quarry, we give it back to the community, and the community can have it for another purpose. In this particular case, it's the Milton Quarry just outside of Toronto. We're going to step that up a bit. Everybody's heard of Forestry Stewardship Council. People have heard of the Marine Stewardship Council. We're doing the same thing with aggregates, partnering with environmental defense. We've created socially and environmentally responsible aggregate program to step that up again to be more friendly to the community and certify what we're doing. An interesting thing in our business, not only are we talking sustainability, we're actually measuring. This is a standard report for our ready-mix business. We measure the co-generated products we use, we measure the recycled water we use, and we measure the recycled aggregates that we use in our ready-mix mixes. So this is the work in Toronto. So things that we've done, this is a bridge that we replaced, this is innovation. This is a bridge we replaced in Hamilton. I've started at 12 o'clock at night on Friday. With 61 hours, we took down the existing bridge, moved in a bridge that we built in a field, moved it into place, and put traffic back on it again for the next day. No congestion, close the highway down for the weekend, and open it back up again. 427 highway, we replaced concrete. This is a fast-track concrete, which we transferred after we did the learnings from this to Singapore. We can close the highway at 12 o'clock, fix the highway, concrete sets up in 4 hours, and have the highway back open at 6 o'clock in the morning. We need to do these things in the community. Pervious concrete, if you look at the bottom, concrete that water runs right through. This is in Europe where we've done a parking lot with colored pervious concrete. No sewers, the water lands on the parking lot and drains directly through to the water table. A very environmentally friendly and attractive solution, which we can do here. Munro Products, north of Toronto and Barrie, have one of the most sophisticated and modern plants in the world for building materials, or concrete building materials. These are requirements for the tunnel liners for the subway or any large sewer distribution system, and we have that capability here in Toronto. And one little simple one, we have 2,000 loads of concrete a day being delivered to job sites. When you clean off the chute of a ready-mix truck, we just clean it off, and instead of leaving it on the side of the road, we put it in that little drum, take that little drum back to the yard, and we recycle it into our facility so that there is no little concrete blobs all over the particular site. Things that we're working on also is to reduce the demand for raw materials. This is called Cupolex. We put in this Cupolex product, a little dome, requires less aggregates, less cement, and in the bottom right-hand corner you pour concrete, and we're using that right now, experimenting with it at one of our facilities, aggregate facilities in Toronto. And last but not least, as far as innovation, is recycling. This is Terminal 2 Airport. Many people must have gone through there in the years. We actually tore it down and recycled all the aggregates, or the concrete for that as aggregates, and sold it back into the project and sold it into the city. So we can take concrete from the beginning of its life cycle all the way to the end of its life cycle. And my last point is, concrete's a local product. We have local engineers here that can design it. We have local engineers and contractors like Ostrander that can place it. And when you use concrete in your building materials here, it's sustainable, and it's good for the economy, and it's good for Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I should tell anyone who can't hear the beeping up at the front that Jeff Cape runs a very tight organization. Just so you know, all the panelists were told they had 20 seconds to slide. The slides are not in their hands. They're changing automatically, and they beep when 20 seconds are up. Paul, that was masterful.
30 would be better.
I'm sitting up there getting anxious just watching it unfold. Our next speaker is Mr. Steve Power, who is a partner in Ernst & Young. Please welcome Steve Power.
Good luck.
20 seconds felt a lot longer yesterday afternoon as I was preparing, but thank you very much, David. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to take 6 minutes and 40 seconds and share with you some of the innovation that we're seeing in the power and utility sector. My role is the leader of power and utilities for Ernst & Young in Canada, and my job is to be aware of these opportunities and help our clients and users take advantage of these opportunities. So I'm going to quickly speak about the catalysts of change. I think Jeremy did a great job of putting the context for change in place, and then talk about some of the adaptability, affordability issues that we're seeing and some of the innovation to address those. Clearly the power and utility sector is fundamentally changing, as we heard through Jeremy's comments. We see specifically in cities the load growth of populations moving to cities. We see our desire to move away from fossil fuels, as well as an aging infrastructure. So all these things drive a need for change that need to be addressed. We see the utility and power sector or energy sector of the future moving away from that top-down model that we heard about earlier towards a more networked base where users are providers, providers are users, there's information flows as well as electron flows in the future, and the ability to take advantage of this non-linear approach will be key to the success. Currently, within the urban grid infrastructure, there's lots of demands. There's only more demands to come. We talk about electric vehicles. We talk about load growth. This quick graph here shows what projections of urban populations will be over the next little while. And there goes 20 seconds. Let's talk a little about electric vehicles. They're going to reshape the demand and demand for infrastructure and how it's used. Just think about the demand profiles. More affluent neighborhoods, more affluent cities that can afford the electric vehicles will need the demand to power them when they get home. Consumer demand management, very important. Technology such as smart meters give the decisions to users how to, consumers how to use the electricity. And this also gives a lot of information to the utilities that are providing the electricity as to usage and how to deliver that energy more efficiently. Load growth, we're seeing more and more urbanization. We see suburban growth. But I think important here is another point that Jeremy touched on is as we're rebuilding things, it's an opportunity to build it right, to build it with the sustainability and innovation in it that's necessary. So clearly change is coming. In fact, change is here. This graphic is showing that the graphic people at E&Y think electrical vehicles are going to be moving very quickly. But I just want to comment on a few areas. Smart grid, smart technologies, the energy sources and the role of utilities in those, and energy efficiency. Clearly the drivers for smart grid were very well articulated by Jeremy in terms of being the infrastructure that allows for the innovative use of energy on a sustainable and efficient basis. Technology is key to that in order to be successful, and the concept of smart grid are the essence of that. Smart technology is happening today. We heard about the 5 pillars of the European Union. We heard about the activities here in Ontario. So, we're seeing forecasts of $200 billion annual being spent on retrofitting and establishing smart grids around the world. These programs are unique. They have big issues associated with them. They are expensive. They can't fail because our economic survival and social survival depend on them. And a big piece of this, I think, is the education and awareness and adoption of the businesses and the users that are going to be taking part in the end user. Renewable energy. We talked about, or Jeremy talked about, utilities' roles in that, and we very much see that role for the local utilities to be the hub, and it's more a hub of information and the flows of those information sources across the different users and the different types of renewable energies. As we think about energy efficiency, this is really the silent renewable. Everyone knows that at megawatt capacity avoided is money saved. So the ability to use energy efficient buildings, put tools in the hands of consumers such that they can make decisions to be more effective, leveraging technology such as the internet, handheld devices, you now can control your energy usage at home. Clearly this is not going to be free. Made a couple seconds up with that one. So let's look at some of the differing investment sources that we're seeing. There are big investments that are needed, and our view is that there needs to be specific sources for each of these, and they need to come from government, they need to come from Bay Street, the financiers, the bankers, and they also need to come from the existing players in the industry. Some of the innovative things we're seeing, public-private partnerships clearly are something that we're starting to see. We're seeing specific financial instruments and financial models being developed and traded to help find the financing for this. And a unique thing that we're seeing is the bake sale there, and that's supposed to represent the community involvement where, you know, it might be not too far off that we're attending fundraisers to build solar panels so that the Lions Park baseball diamond can power their lights so our kids can play baseball at night. However we go forward with this, clearly electricity has the impact of the government impact. So we need to see leadership from government. We need governments to set the correct tones in terms of regulatory regimes and policies such that there is a clear direction as to where we're going. There's certainty in that, and it's not changing overnight. So that was the fastest group of 20 seconds I've had. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Steve. The next rapid fire presentation will be by Ms. Robin Ried, who is Senior Community Manager for Real Estate and Urban Development. She's also a Global Leadership Fellow at the World Economic Forum. Please welcome Robin Ried.
Great. Well, good morning. I'm Robin Ried, and I manage the Urban Development Group at the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is best known for our annual meeting in Davos, but in reality that's a small portion of what we do. Generally speaking, we put together leaders of the public, private, and NGO sectors together to address issues of global importance. The issue I take care of is urban infrastructure, and that's what I'll talk about today. Driving this discussion is a massive, unprecedented phenomenon of urbanization happening predominantly in the global south and east of the world, which is creating a major demand for urban infrastructure as people move into cities. To put this in perspective, 1 in 10 people lived in cities a century ago, 50% of the global population lives in it today, and 70% will in the future. Here in the northwest of the world, it's hard to grasp what urbanization looks like. When you Google city, the first image that appears is Philadelphia, which shows skyscrapers, gleaming buildings, and other factors that we think of as cities. But the reality is that urbanization is far different in the global south and east, in Asia, India, Africa, etc. As new low-income residents come into cities, these are taking an informal shape. So they're low, overcrowded, incrementally built by the hands of those who enter these cities, and illegally occupied, generally speaking. They lack access to water, sanitation, electricity. This problem is widespread. Today, 1 billion people lack access to sanitation, electricity, and water, and by 2030, 2 billion will. And each year, 70 million slum dwellers are added each year. Why is this happening? Simply put, the fast rate of urban migration is outstripping the capacity of government to respond. Cities are traditionally the funding sources behind putting in place urban infrastructure, but they lack the capital, the tax base, the legal frameworks, and the institutional capacity to actually put in place infrastructure needed. Let me take a second to define what I mean by urban infrastructure. It's the network of local roads, sewer, water, electricity that allows residents and firms to work productively under high-density conditions. It's distinct from economic infrastructure, which I think of as the major highways, ports, airports, and so forth that allow for pan-regional trade. This is important because the two are traditionally funded quite differently. And because economic infrastructure projects have a promising return on investment and are larger scale, they've largely been more attractive to large-scale investors and foreign investment sources. So urban infrastructure sort of falls behind and is still reliant on the city. We often forget how important urban infrastructure is to our productivity. And it's not until these services are taken away that we realize the importance. For example, could you imagine New York City without its network of roads and streetlights and so forth? It's almost unimaginable. So as local governments struggle to provide this infrastructure, who can fill the void? In my capacity at the World Economic Forum, I've seen very promising examples by NGOs and private sector entities to leverage the ability of community residents themselves to actually contribute to urban infrastructure provision. I share 3 examples. The first is SEVA. SEVA Bank is part of the Self-Employed Women's Association of India, which facilitates access to finance for poor working women. the bank has partnered in Ahmedabad, a city where the slum population doubled in the past couple decades. So SEVA partnered with the city and 41 local communities in a slum upgrading program. The program installs sewer, water, lighting, and other services to these slum communities. Upgrades are funded in a cost-sharing program, whereby city residents actually contribute 30% of the funding cost. The private sector contributes 30%, and the bank contributes the rest. Contributions from individuals are actually pooled by the bank and channeled to the city as a down payment for the upgrade. This program has reached a lot of success. In fact, 10,000 families and more have been affected, and it's mobilized over 8 million rupees of contributions from slum dwellers, which is previously unconscionable. In Latin America, there's another promising example by a private sector entity. A local building supplier and cement supplier has accelerated access to paved roads for low-income communities by setting up partnerships between these communities and municipal authorities. Residents receive microloans from the company, which are pooled to finance over 50% of the cost of paving, and the city provides the rest. The financing provided by the company is actually backed by a grant from the Inter-American Development Bank, which provides partial guarantee to the financing that's provided. In its pilot phase, this project offered microloans to 6,000 families and oversaw the installation of 300,000 meters of paved streets. In its second phase, it will reach 35,000 families, and each microloan is about $1,000 per family repaid in 70 weeks. The third example, which I'll touch on, is one by UN Habitat. The multilateral organization has provided one-time grant funding to capitalize a revolving credit enhancement fund. The funds are used to support slum upgrading projects in Tanzania, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Tanzania. The program helps communities who don't have access to finance due to high interest rates and lack of credit get financing for urban infrastructure projects. So after the initial capitalization by UN Habitat, each local finance facility operates its own business and finances infrastructure projects by pooling together community savings and by drawing on local bank sources which previously didn't lend money due to sort of high interest rates and lack of creditworthiness of individuals. So through the credit enhancement, banks have been attracted to the low-income sector for the first time. The initial capitalization is generally about $2 million per facility, and about 4 facilities currently have reached about 10,000 households. So to conclude, I bring up these examples because they offer promising ways to fill a gap that is otherwise not being filled where municipalities don't have the money to actually finance urban infrastructure. They're currently small scale, and a lot of question will go into how we can scale up these examples. But at the World Economic Forum, we're currently going to use the sort of brain trust that we have by our public, private, and NGO leaders to try and think more about this question going forward. Thank you.
So we have an example here of someone who should be instantly recruited by every business, because Robin, as you may have noticed, took a minute for each of those examples by putting in 3 identical slides. So as they changed, nothing happened. And everyone is aggrieved. That's good, Robin. Well done. Innovation in action, absolutely. Our final speaker is Ms. Jennifer Schwab, who is Chief Sustainability Officer and co-founder of Sierra Club Green Home. Please welcome Jennifer Schwab.
So between the new presentation method that I was just introduced to this week and coming off California time, I had a talk with myself in the mirror this morning and said, okay, I can do this. I've had plenty of on-camera time, plenty of speaking engagements. Why am I so nervous? But here we go. I'm Jennifer Schwab. I'm CSO of the social entrepreneurship web venture with the Sierra Club called sierraclubgreenhome.com. Our goal is simple. We set out in March of 2009 to green the general public and encourage energy efficiency upgrades, home sustainability initiatives, as well as renewable energy in the home. Needless to say, a lot's happened since this idea was conceived in late 2007 with the collapse of Lehman, unemployment, and quite frankly, when people are worried about losing their homes, they're not necessarily looking to green them. So we've certainly had our challenges, and we've come away with a lot of valuable learnings over the past couple of years. When people ask me, well, how's it going? Are people really getting into this? I often say, well, they are to an extent. The intelligentsia is all over it. And if you go to San Francisco, it seems very skewed. But back on that last slide, I often think just saying the economy is the reason why things aren't happening might be a scapegoat, because if you look around the world, such a large proportion of people do not have access to basic needs like sanitation and water. I don't think the average person around the world is going to be encouraged to green their lifestyle. That's been my deduction from the past few years, even in a great economy. So what do we do from here to make this happen? I think the best innovations will address multiple issues at once, and that's businesses mostly. Solutions need to be deployed in scale. And then lastly, we can't allow us to believe that individuals are going to take this on and global climate change is going to be combated. It really has to be businesses, NGOs, academics, as well as entrepreneurs all working together. So another warning that I've had from our business is we work with energy auditors, solar contractors, bamboo, flooring specialists. One particular business, and I want to get into the innovations part of this presentation. One particular business I was introduced to helps resolve the issue of energy audits not being a viable business model. They're labor intensive, they're costly, the equipment is expensive, the training is it's extensive as well, and the ROI for an energy audit firm just isn't there. So this company, IR Systems, which is out of MIT, actually engages in infrared imaging through high throughput and high resolution mapping. So they can actually map a whole neighborhood's the heat losses from the built environment. And I would say they can do a square block in the amount of time that it would take to do one energy audit. And I found this to be a really interesting innovation that could change the whole world if executed properly. And anyway, it's called IR technology, and EDGE is the proprietary predictive analysis type of mapping that they do. So if you have additional questions after the presentation, I can go into more depth. Secondly, I want to introduce you guys to a water scarcity business that is out of the Bay Area. It's called Banyan Water, and its solution is to look at dilapidated water infrastructure as well as areas where there may be leaks. And they do something similar that IR does. They use analytics and predictive analysis and a smart water grid to manage water systems and act as sort of a water steward in areas where there could be vast improvement. So I thought this would be a great application to cities because, again, it's something that could be adopted en masse and could have a profound impact on saving water as well as money, which of course is top of mind. Lastly, I'm going to get into another innovation that I believe could change the face of the developing world, especially in major cities where we're battling waste as well as lack of electricity. So this company is called Highmark, and it's actually out of Canada. And what they do is they take waste, so organic waste generally from feedlots, factory farms, and they turn it into energy, biogas. The nice part about Highmark is they've spent decades actually perfecting the process so the byproducts from waste to energy actually produce other sustainability benefits. I thought it was a thoughtful approach because even though there's other European firms that do waste to energy, several of them don't think about the whole life cycle. So again, I know this is going really fast, so if you have any questions about any of these 3 innovations, I'm happy to share them with you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have about 25 minutes maximum, maybe a little less, before we head to a break. And what I'd like to do is to just get a conversation going involving our panelists. You'll be free to join in from the floor as we get underway. But I want to start with a question for Paul. Jeremy Rifkin did highlight for us the importance of systems thinking. At the same time, we all deal with, the necessary incrementalism in whatever we're doing. Since we're on the ground level here, ask the question, what's the one innovation that you think, or conceptual shift that would be important to really drive the sustainability agenda for cities over the next 20, 30 years? If you had to come up with something either concrete, pun intended, or more abstract, what would it be?
So what was the question? One idea.
Your one big idea or your one big innovation, what is it?
I would say for me, and unfortunately it's a commercial aspect for me because of the business I'm in. In our business, if we can make a more environmentally friendly cement with less emissions and less CO2, and do that in cooperation partnerships with NGOs and government. Because at the end of the day, concrete is an essential building material for whatever we're going to build. And I think that we can, we've taken the clinker content in the last 20 years, which clinker is what creates some of the emissions from 95% to 60%. I think we can improve on that and reduce our emissions by burning alternate fuels, by being more creative around designs. And I think if we can come up with a more environmentally friendly cement, it would be one of the most important things we could do around sustainability. My second point would be that we should do it all locally. For me, it's when the work is done locally, when the building materials are made locally, then everything just spins around in the same area. And I think it very much helps the economy of the city. We're going to have to build the city, so let's build it locally, let's build it well, let's build it efficiently and environmentally friendly.
Thank you. Any comments from other panelists? Let's open it up to respond. Why don't we start with Steve and we'll just work our way through.
So to build on the concept of the local aspect of Paul's comments, I think the most change, the most innovation will come from the people that are impacted most by it, whether it be in the concrete business, whether it be in the political will of a city. So I too believe that when the local populations realize the benefits of acting as a group to the improvement of their local cities, local communities, that's when we'll start to see some real change as well. So we're big believers that innovation will come from small, medium-sized business, will come from community organizations, NGOs, and it's that group of people that will really be the drivers for the change and the innovation that will be required to make some of the changes we've been talking about here today.
Robin?
Is this working? I agree with the comments that were said previously. I think that public-private partnerships are an incredibly important way to mobilize local community members in collaboration with larger corporations and other nonprofit organizations. I think that something important to think about is how to scale up these public-private partnerships, because each one takes a lot of work and they're quite unique. So if there are ways that we can think about to sort of pool together opportunities and take, in the examples I was referencing with just urban infrastructure projects, and take it into a way where you can securitize and take it to the capital markets, I think that'll be an important thing to think about in order to get the most out of public-private partnerships and local resources.
Jennifer?
I think I would look to startups and entrepreneurs that have these amazing ideas. Oftentimes, they're sort of behind the scenes in lab coats, creating something big, and the idea is there, but oftentimes the execution is not. And I think we've witnessed that in the green movement thus far, where some of these companies get out in front of themselves in terms of PR and promising the holy grail of energy and the bloom box, whatever it may be, and then it sets everyone up for disappointment. So I think we need to be mindful about how we execute these solutions to scale them in a way that is believable and that the technology is ready.
Thank you. And I'm going to throw this one out to the audience, but also to our panelists. So Jeremy Rifkin talked to us about this question of capitalization and financing innovation in the clean tech area. Simple example, we have a green roof on our athletic center. It pays for the showers and everything else that happen at the university on our downtown campus in that facility. But boy, finding the spare cash in a public organization to simply put that in play is not straightforward with current technology. It's not that efficient. So what about Jeremy's idea of finding a consortia of capital? How has this happened in your experience? Who capitalizes, who pays for these things? How do they pay for themselves? Anyone can take it.
Well, we've seen the example that actually Jeremy made reference to, where bankers are coming in and understanding the business that the business that wants to make the investment in the technology to create the energy efficiencies, and understanding the economics behind that. They've basically de-risked the opportunity to lend money to that by creating contracts that the bankers get paid back first out of that savings that are coming out of the organization. The larger issue and the larger question is these technologies are expensive. These are early technologies. There needs to be a regulatory regime, a government policy regime that is consistent and certain, to the extent that government policy can be certain, that just gives that general environment of economic certainty and economic support that there is the ability to make some longer term decisions that the capital will not be put at any undue risk.
Other thoughts from panelists about how to pay for all this and get it financed? No one's taking it. What about out here?
I'll just add one point, and right or wrong, our costs to manufacture cement have gone up in the last 2 years by $3 a ton simply because of the higher hydro bills associated with the feed-in tariff.
Test.
Do our people in the field only have 20 seconds to make their point?
There we go. On the issue of financing it, the McKinsey study on the abatement cost curve shows that 40% of the CO2 we have to reduce in North America to meet our Kyoto goals is very highly profitable. And if we were to reinvest those savings in the next least cost solutions, we would get all the way to our Kyoto goals with no cost to society. So the question to the panel would be, given that there's all this low-hanging fruit, in fact it's so low-hanging, we're walking on it, why are we not pursuing it with a wartime-like effort if it's highly profitable? I mean, why do we have to mandate companies to chase profit? So I'd put it to the panel, what are the barriers that are preventing us from getting this low-hanging fruit, and how would you recommend that we do it?
Where's the low-hanging fruit?
Building energy efficiency, payback, lighting retrofit has a 1-year payback on average. Like, where in the market can you get 100% year-over-year return that's guaranteed and will only go up as electricity prices go up?
step in here. And another hat that I wear at the World Economic Forum, we just completed a project on energy efficiency in the real estate market, commercial real estate market, and addressing some of those barriers. So a couple of the primary things that we heard were barriers were, generally speaking, this sort of lack of certainty of the regulatory environment. Stakeholders are hesitant to act if they think that regulation is going to change in the future. If they act now, are they going to have to change what they do to adhere to new regulations in the future? So that's certainly a key one. A second is data and a lack of data. So banks currently don't have the historical cost data of retrofits, cost versus actual data on how a retrofit improves a building. There's currently no sort of instruments to securitize retrofits, sell them to the capital markets. There's no collateral on those efforts either. You know, a building gets a mortgage because it has a building behind it, but a building upgrade doesn't necessarily have the same kind of tangible asset behind it. So there are a number of barriers to address, and in a report that we're putting out next week, actually, we show that government can play the single most catalytic role by setting standards for mandatory disclosure around energy measures as a first step, and then a number of carrots and sticks can follow.
I want to take a little swing at the question and just highlight that certainly many public sector organizations have already gone through retrofit. You know, we've replaced lighting on 3 campuses. It's terrific, cost saving pretty quickly, very good return. But as soon as you start to get to larger scale investments, there is a capital issue. And you can say, well, money's cheap right now. Money's cheap because interest rates are low. That has an impact on pension plans and solvency. That affects your borrowing capacity. So this, back to systems thinking, I still think there is a capital shortfall, and that Rifkin's notion of finding ways to provide what I think are pretty safe loans to a variety of for-profit and non-profit organizations as part of the equation. I'm doing that to put banks on the hook because you'll notice Jeremy Rifkin gave banks a great out. The whole financial services industry was exonerated. The collapse was all about peak oil, so I thought we had to pick on bankers again somehow today. Other questions and comments?
I turn this on. Oh, there we go. So I'm Susan MacArthur. I'm a managing director at Jacob Securities. I think I was the only one that admitted earlier that I was a banker in the crowd. I'm sure there's more of you out there. I just wanted to address your issue. I think you had an excellent point. We're working now with a company who makes biopolymers. And it's a great technology. There's a huge demand for it in the market. They do it through fermenting bacteria. The challenge is with many of the companies that we see at this stage of development is they are right between the VC stage and the private equity stage. So they prove their technology at scale, but they're now building a plant so that their users, end users like Tetra Pak, for example, can actually run their material through their big machines. There really is very little capital available for this stage of development for these technologies, and this is an area where we need the capital markets to step into and step up to the plate. This is a great company. It's based in Quebec in the Saguenay, and the CEO is a woman, so I would put my money behind her. But this is just an example. This is one example. There are many, many other companies that are at the same stage of development that need capital. So post-VC, pre-private equity, just before growth equity. So they're just about to get their contracts in hand. It's a very hard stage of development to finance. So if anybody has any ideas on the panel on that front, I think that would be helpful.
Panelists?
I was going to say, you know, I think after sort of, I guess, the boom years when private equity was just pouring money into ventures like the one you mentioned, you know, that dried up in 08, and people are being cautious in every industry, but especially green, because there's no government mandate that makes companies really comfortable. I mean, private equity and VCs really comfortable. And I think also the idea of patient money is having to come in play, whereas there was an idea that, oh wow, the green energy movement, this is definitely Google part 2 and then some. And that mindset just, it's diminished now, and I think that's healthy because patient money can be good, but it's finding the right VC and private equity to take that on and understand it's not going to be an overnight sensation. So, and I like the way you put that, because it sounds like, you know, no one really wants to be the first to try something out, but once it's proven, then everybody piles on, and that stage, that sounds like where that company is. Yeah. Yeah.
Other comments from the floor? What about other questions?
Hi, my name is Franco Hasu. I work at Ernst & Young. I cover the clean tech field, and one of the areas, I think definitely there's a capital shortage, but that's a very complicated subject for today. One of the issues is that there's been, you know, the Western economies in the last 10 years have been driven very much by mortgages and, you know, investing in residential housing. And people have benefited, of course. What happened is that has provided the property tax revenues for a lot of cities and indirectly benefited the cities. But I think the capital markets needs to change so that instead of mortgages, people are able to invest in the infrastructure in their communities. And the banks and the capital markets do need to evolve to allow for that, so that cities and, you know, others have that access to individuals who are no longer focused on investing in their house, but, you know, they can take a mortgage if they wish to and invest in the city and in the infrastructure, which indirectly is going to provide the capital for clean tech. Any comments?
So we have a shift from a mortgage-based capital market, where that is retail lending is a kind of cornerstone of the capital market world. And the question is, how do individual mortgagees, instead of taking out mortgages on their homes, begin to do what amounts to common social purpose investing to build cities and get a return on equity rather than simply owning their homes? I think I got that. And think about it. Intensification is the greenest thing we can do. You're going to live in a condo, you're going to build vertically. Your mortgage may be at a different level, but perhaps there's something you want to do in terms of buying into a green roof or a whole series of solar panels in the building. How does that look and feel?
Your capital that you may have allocated to space, and you say you need a mortgage, you know, $200,000 for a $300,000 unit or a house that you think is going to go to 500, and you don't necessarily need all the space. I learned that very much having to move between New York and Toronto. I realized I really didn't need all the space I needed in Toronto. And so people can reduce the amount of space and the amount of mortgage, and then that will release capital because, say, instead of borrow, you know, your savings, there's going to be more savings available and more capacity to mortgage or borrow in order to finance infrastructure. I think the issue is, can we create a capital market that will provide a stream of products that will replace the incentive to invest in real estate and mortgages instead of in the cities? I think, you know, I'd be happy to invest in my city if it, of course, is going to give me the same kind of return as in the area that I live. You know, my house is not just where I live, also my community is where I live, and I think it's just a question as well, is a return on equity, and that having that availability of a capital market that's readily accessible. And we spoke about that a lot, about how banks can give you solar panels, etc. How can we create that environment in the city of Toronto?
Would that be the equivalent to like tax-free munis?
Well, I mean, yeah, the states have done that. Tax-free munis are a good idea, but I think there's also that tends to be too indirect of a correlation sometimes. You know, municipalities there's too much pressure put on municipalities to pay interest because that tends to be very short term. You know, most of those munis are maybe 10-year munis, right, or 5-year, and that's very short term when you're talking about, you know, rebuilding infrastructure and building, you know, very efficient cities. So I think, yeah, it's a good idea, but I think it's that's not gonna. I think we need more than that. That's my perspective.
As Franco often does with me as one of my colleagues,
he speaks at a level that I'm not always following. I think part of this is, as humans, we need to understand that a big house isn't the best thing for us as a city. And until we start to feel the real costs of what it takes to heat and cool and keep a large home, hits us in the pocketbooks, it's not going to change our behaviors. And again, where government comes in with incentives or penalties or whatever the regime is that's going to get our behaviors to change, we'll continue to live the lifestyle that we're grown accustomed to. Jeremy spoke about children coming home and asking why the light's still on. Well, it's not happening at my house yet. I'm still going around turning the lights off, and yeah, they're conscious about some things, but there's a fundamental change in the way we think about these issues that needs to happen as well. And business, government, NGOs, communities all have a piece to play to that. So that's what I interpreted out of Franco's question. I'm not sure if I'm anywhere close.
If I could just comment really briefly, it seems to me that one of the challenges in any city is the reality that if you're an angel investor, you like to know who the CEO is, and it changes every 4 years, and you share that responsibility with a few 100,000 other people. The results are not predictable. So this is why entities like the Ontario Power Authority, which have been set up to provide some arm's length management of some of these issues, make some sense, at least to this person. And I would say we have to be smart about creating arm's length entities that will guide this kind of decision making at the municipal level as well. Otherwise, it's pretty hard to say we're just going to do social purpose investing through either tax rebates municipally or start putting money into play. It's either got to be private or at least private-public with some arm's length depoliticization, because the swings back and forth really make it hard for you to imagine putting money anywhere, I would say, if I could be quite honest. Please.
It's fascinating discussion that this has gone to financing, because it is really where the rubber hits the road, and people are realizing that the technologies are there. As Jeremy Rifkin said, it's all there. Therefore, it's this leadership group, the people who are self-selected, who come to forums like this, who have to actually say, what is the fundamental innovation that we can embrace? And those, Jeremy described the pillars. One of them is doing more with less. Can we agree, and can we put into our business plans and in our social plans that we need to do more with less? It's a productivity opportunity. It's a conservation opportunity. But we cannot run an economy on renewable power at the level of energy use now. It has to go down. At the level of consumption, it has to go down. So there's a sort of innovation of thinking, of concept, that I don't think we've kind of landed on. And I would paraphrase it just as doing more with less, or being more productive. That in and itself is an innovation, which we have not, it's sort of, we kind of nod and say, yes, it's there, but we haven't necessarily embraced it and operationalized it. And then you have to invest in it. And so for the University of Toronto, you have a huge endowment fund. There's piles of money. Invest in yourself. Why are you looking for the capital markets necessarily? What did you make on the markets in 2008? An energy efficiency investment is a 15 or 20% ROI. So, if we think about doing more with less, and that efficiency dividend as something that is good for the planet, good for productivity, good for our bottom lines, then it will become an innovation in and of itself. And that's, I think all of you have said it and skirted around it, but I'm trying to bring it down to an innovation that we can all embrace.
Thank you. Great comment. We'll put you on the investment committee. That's good. Along with the Sharks at Bay Street, and we'll see who survives. Next, please.
I live in a 5-bedroom, typical North York house. Grew up a couple of teenagers, and vast amounts of hot water went out that every month on the utility bill. And many of us have been to Europe, and you look out in the morning in the Mediterranean, you see all these rooftop water heaters with the solar, and we all say that's a great idea. But I suspect if I were to be the first one on George Henry Boulevard to put up this big tin cistern on top of the roof with a solar panel, probably the city planning department would swoop down and my neighbors would ostracize me. So we all deal with what's called city planning, and the cities were planned 50 years ago and 40 years ago, and that great talk about how it's well, 1 in 10 were in the in cities, and now we're 50 and we're going to 70. Jeff, I didn't see any municipal people on the agenda today. I think our cities have to get rid of the city planning division, and we have to have what's called city replanning, because there's a hydro there's a hot water hydro fund that you can buy, and it produces a great unit. But when my hot water heater goes out, they just want to put a new one in. They don't want to put one on my roof, which would save me a lot of money. So I just think that the cities have to drive a lot of this, because we are living in the city.
Fantastic comments. We've got all kinds of people. Jeff, what do you want to do? Shall we keep going, since we're really getting comments more than questions, and they're all terrific. We'll take 2 more comments, one at the back and one here, and then we'll have a break.
Yes, my name is John Quirtoff. I'm the president and CEO of Trillium Power. Many of you may have read of me today in the papers. But my question and comment is that a couple of years ago I was invited by the Italian government to represent Canada's low-carbon economy at the G8. And some of the thinking there was brilliant, and it never seems to make its way over here. One of the examples was that in the finance side, and I haven't heard that come up here, is, you know, we over here in North America keep on talking about R&D as if it's some holy grail. You know, we do research and development, and then somehow magically through Adam Smith's invisible hand, it works its way into the economy. And what they came out with, and it was a brilliant document, it talked about RDD&D, which is research, development, demonstration, and deployment. And the problem is that at the demonstration and deployment, there's never any money. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. And, you know, what I'm amazed at, we're all talking about funds and funds and funds, but why don't we start using what we already have, which is in a micro area, has been trying to be done by the TREC here in Toronto on solar share and wind share. You know, we could do this at a federal level. We have all kinds of funds if you had green bonds or a green bank. So the opportunity's there, but it's just not happening. We could back as we repave roads down the center of Toronto. We could end up putting ground source heating and have district heating. So there's all kinds of options. If money's the problem, the solution's already there. And, you know, countries like Germany aren't just a little bit ahead. They're light years ahead of what's going on over here. Denmark and Germany. I mean, what they're doing is brilliant. And, you know, it's amazing to me that we're not looking at these issues. You know, we talk about, you know, energy. There was a comment by Paul and on the panel, and he started talking about his $3 a ton going up. Well, I'll take exception with that, because if you want to look at why your power is going up, just go and look at all the nuclear reactors. When 55% of our grid is nuclear, you will always have, you know, price increases. The nuclear power are the Wall Street bankers of the energy industry. They're always looking for handouts, and it will never stop. And only renewables, if you look at the provinces with the renewables, whether it be Quebec or BC, they're the ones with the most stable prices. It's the same around the world. So it seems to me that there's a lack of true leadership here, and that the real issue of money is really ephemeral because the solutions are out there. And I'd like to hear the panel talk about this.
We're a little tight, but we will have the panel comment, and then we'll have the final speaker who will not be asking a question, but will simply opine. I'm not going to ask the gentleman to repeat because there was quite a long preface, but in a nutshell, nuclear is not the answer. It is actually part of the bulwark of the current non-renewable system. And what do we need to do to actually drive the renewable investments and to really move the needle?
Well, one of the things I think we often forget is that the world's nuclear industry was basically supported by governments, whether it be France, whether it be Canada through AECL. So maybe the model that we're looking for on renewables and new technologies, we've already lived with nuclear. And I'm not sure if we're answering the question, but I think we often forget that at one time nuclear was a new technology. It was an exciting technology. It offered benefits to society, and it was invested in by government. So maybe some of the models we're looking for we've already used. We're just to the point that we are people that grow accustomed to the way we're doing things. We need the leadership to change.
I think incentivizing the consumer would be a great idea. I know that our government decided to play the private equity hand with Solyndra and several other firms, including Fisker and Tesla, and quite frankly, it took a lot of the natural competition out of the market back in 07, 08, and 09, and now it's really come back to bite Obama in a pretty bad way. I think if those billions were spent in incentives for people to buy electric cars where they come closer to parity with conventional cars, and same with solar, getting it closer to like what Germany did, feed-in tariff, make it so attractive that people just don't say no. I think that's the best way to deploy dollars to actually see action take place. Because right now, it's just like we're in limbo, and
Terrific. We will go to our final speaker, and then we'll close. You're the last word, and then we're heading out for a break.
Well, I appreciate the privilege of opining, and I won't abuse it. But I will ask a question, or leave one hanging in the air, perhaps. My colleague, Mr. Brick, mentioned the notion of decommissioning urban planning and having sort of a replanning department. And what I want to suggest and perhaps ask at the same time is how pertinent is the question of master planning? Mr. Rifkin mentioned emergence once, and he mentioned master planning once in his speech. Master planning, a top-down method of organizing ourselves. Emergence, a bottom-up, tied to Chardin's notion of new sphere and Jeremy's notion of biothinking. Are we able to operate as an urban society? Can we redesign our cities if we continue to look at that issue in the framework of master planning? Or do we have to look at it as emergence, things like microfinancing, and how do we reach that balance as we're in this interregnum of we're trying to support two types of infrastructure?
Why don't we leave that as a question for everyone to contemplate over coffee, and please join me in thanking our 4 terrific panelists. We'll take a break.